seek, above all, for a game worth playing. Oh baby, it's witchcraft contagious. I felt it for ages. We're out of these cages in this house of mages. It's witchcraft, it's dangerous. Beware of these pages. There's spells of all flavors in this house of mages. In this house of mages. In this house of mages.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Make Yoga Magic Again, the House of Mages podcast. I'm Daniel Cumming. In this episode, I interview Victoria Redbard. Victoria Redbard is Australia's leading sexuality expert, a speaker, author, facilitator, and altogether business badass. Over the past 3 years, she's founded the Institute of New Paradigm Intimacy, a globally accredited sexuality school honing its cutting-edge self-pleasure modality. She's also the driving force behind Enlightenment in the Bedroom events, the Tedx of sexuality, held in 9 locations across Australia. Through a delicious mix of intuition, instinct, and passion, she wakes people up to the innocent aliveness of their erotic nature. I first met Victoria at a Contact Dance event in Brisbane and instantly hit it off. We had a very similar passion for exploring the mysteries of the world, asking the questions that most seem to ignore, and seeing the world as a playground within which the possibilities for more joy, pleasure, and evolution are endless. She seems to be able to see the subtle strings that connect everything in this great web of weird, and is able to weave her pieces of magic into it in a way that inspires and empowers anyone that comes into contact with her. I've had so much fun journeying with her in many different ways over the last few years, and very grateful that she's been a part of my life. So without further ado, Victoria Redbard. All right, we are good to go. So welcome everybody to this episode of House of Mages. My name is Daniel Cumming, and I have a very special guest with me today, someone I've been wanting to chat magic with for way too long, but for some reason we haven't really made the space up until now, so this is perfect for it. I'll let her introduce herself, but I feel like our connection, the best way I can sum it up is when myself and Victoria were at a temple night at the Expansion Mansion, and there was like 50 people all around us, and we found each other right in the middle of the room in the circle and just looked each other dead in the eye and just started laughing like maniacally, just mad laughter. It was just, yeah, I think that is just like the best way to sum up our friendship, our connection. So yeah, thank you, Victoria. So yeah, I'll let you introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do and why you're here.
Yeah. So I'm Victoria Redbard, somatic sexologist. I have a sexuality school where I talk a little bit about magic indirectly, which is, I believe, like the mysteries of sexuality are really deeply embedded in magic and mystery. So, and it's kind of perfect because I can really mainstream by actually bringing it through the sexuality space. What I've been finding is that, a lot of the work that I do has come through this understanding of magic and mystery and transmission, and how what I'm calling like sensual osmosis. It's like how things move, how information changes hands without actually speaking it into words. So yeah, I love this friendship that we have, because I feel like you are able to meet me in the understanding of all those things without so much language and the mind. And I believe that's where a lot of magic happens, is in the body. So, I've really enjoyed our friendship. Dan and I actually met on an aesthetic dance, and it was just full weaving from the moment we met, and the bodies were just communicating, and so much was happening. So it's been a really exciting friendship to play with.
Yeah, definitely. I felt that too. I just remember looking at you and just thinking, yeah, I get you. Like, I get where you're coming from, everything. Yeah, definitely. So I'd really love to delve, because is it exactly what you said? A lot of the time we kind of have to avoid even using the word magic and just kind of explain it in psychological terms and just, more mainstream terms in ways that people understand what we're trying to do and not have those connotations around it. But I feel like people are starting to understand what we mean when we say magic, but then everyone has their own spin on it as well. So I'd really like to just start with how you got introduced to magic, like where you started, like how you got, introduced to the term, what your experiences were, if you had any weird synchronicities at the start that kind of linked you in, your successes, your failures, your crazy little adventures in getting into it. I'd love to hear all about it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I always thought that I was a witch, and I had no real understanding of why I thought that. But it was just, just being in my garden and just like making potions all the time. And the friends that I had at the time, we were like obsessed with fairies, and there was a particular tree on the green that the bus would drop us off at. We'd always run there, and there would always be, this conversation of the fairies and where they were and what they were, what they were saying and what the storylines were. And I feel like, for me, this is I grew out of that for a phase of my life. And then I realized actually the threads that are actually so important in those pieces. And for me, it's about the listening to the space. A lot of people think for me around sex and around magic and around all these pieces is about listening to the life force. It's like an energy that we can listen to that's even between you and I in our relationship, there's a space between. And for me, that's where the magic is. It's and that's been the one of the major things that I've taken away from how we play with magic from when we were a kid to what actually happens now, and how that's also weaved into my successes and into my relationship with business and with sexuality and all those pieces is how am I listening to the space between me and my business? How am I listening to the space between me and my partners? How am I listening to me and just the space that is the universe? And when we're listening to the silence, almost, it's like actually there's threads of consciousness that want to be pulled. And I guess that really came back to me, as an adult through the kind of avenues of witchcraft, I suppose, through medicine and through ayahuasca. I saw about I asked them to show me my life path. I asked it to show me my what it wanted me to do, and it just said it was almost like it was showing me how I was a witch, and it showed me all my powers, and it showed me all these parts of myself that have always been there, and almost how to use them. And I guess now I just have the language of I'm listening to the space between me and whatever. Whereas when I was a kid, it was I didn't even need to understand that in my mind. I was just doing it. Do you know what I mean? It was you almost I was so embodied in it as a child that I didn't need to explain it to anybody else. Almost see this as the way of how we experience our life, and we think that we need to explain to people how we feel all the time. And a lot of what happens by listening to the space is that we don't need to explain how we're feeling. We're just actually feeling it, and we're being in it. And there's almost an osmosis, an information exchange. The movement of the relationship that we have with one another, and the relationship we have with magic is its own organism. It's constantly moving and growing in its own way. And I feel that that's been a lot of my relationship with magic is just being with the organism of life, being with the organism of myself, with my relationships, with all those pieces. So yeah.
Do you have a first memory where you did a spell or something happened, either intentionally or accidentally, and it sparked you to kind of think, wow, this stuff is real. This is something that I can actually play with and do, that I have power. There's something more to the world than most of these muggles think there is. You know what I mean? Is there something noticeable that you can remember? Because I'm really interested in the kind of lineage of magic. I know that there's, everything's kind of mixed together a lot of the time now, but what did you start with? Were there certain authors of books? Did you play around and just try things? Was there someone in your childhood that kind of introduced you to it?
Nobody in my childhood. I feel like my childhood was full of muggles. And really what I see is, a lot of visioning that I did was really around the feeling state. I think I've been using that for longer than I can even recognize. I would feel things into existence as if they were already happening. So it's kind of reverse engineering. And sometimes what I also call when I was a kid, I think I used to do kind of what I would now term as like reverse sex magic. It's like the context of like going, all right, what's the worst case scenario that's going to happen when I do this thing? Like, going to school and like feeling like any kind of anxiety towards something. I would go into my body and feel like the worst case scenarios. And then I would, like already experience it. And it's almost like I'd almost like alchemize the fear inside of me before I would do anything. So that's one way that I would work through that. But I mean, my favorite stories of like how I have gone, okay, this is what I want and this is what's going to happen, is probably around like the work of Joe Dispenza. I started playing with his stuff like a few years ago and just going, okay, here's exactly what I want. And he has the idea of like making mind movies. And so you kind of just like have these like images, and then you play a song and you kind of meditating, and then you meditate to the song and then you bring it back. And I do this all the time now, but I don't necessarily make my movies. I just like anchor songs into my body. And when I play the certain songs, I will start going into my future of what I'm going to create. And it always works now. Like, it's like I anchor different songs to like feelings. I'm like, and I can go straight into like the feeling of opening my heart into like, okay, this is how I'm going to feel when I'm with this person, and okay, this is how I'm going to feel when I step onto stage and create this, and almost like this is how I'm going to feel when like money is moving in this way in my life. And it's just like I've been able to really locate all those things, and I feel like using the essence of like Eros, like working through life force and bringing Eros into any particular energy that I want to play with, has allowed me to activate different things. Actually, talking of like alchemizing as well, I have my butt plugs. These are my magic wands now. And I just designed these.
Putting up a lot of stuff about that recently.
Yeah, like I just designed these, and because I got into this understanding of like, oh my God, you can actually alchemize things through like the subconscious mind. It's like this is like the subconscious mind is often what's holding like heaps of our contraction. And a lot of the contraction is held in the survival. So a lot of like things that we're growing when we're trying to make magic happen, it's often our survival that doesn't believe it's going to happen. Do you know what I mean? It's like the part that's holding us back is like the part that thinks that things are always going to be the way they've been, rather than being able to lean into the unknown and the possibilities. And like, the anus is kind of like in cosmology is kind of connected to the deep unknown, like the void space. So, one of the ways that I also work with magic is to like drop into like, how do I get into the complete void and to the nothingness to bring something through from the unknown? So I really feel like the anus and like working with that contraction that we hold around our base allows us to access that point of like no return that allows the unknown to feel magic, rather than, the terror that comes into stepping towards the unknown.
Definitely. And that's why I love Joe Dispenza as well. I remember, because the one movie is from Becoming Superhuman. Is it any second book? Yeah, because that's the thing. I feel like he really strips back the practicalities of magic. And that's the thing as well, because a lot of the books I've read are very surrounded in mythic framework and cultural framework, and they think that all this kind of stuff is important, this has to happen. But what I feel like he's a modern day kind of mystic, science mystic, pseudoscience, like it's all put in really understandable language and paradigm neutral. It's, they don't need that mythic framework around it, which I think is important in its own way. But I think he's really just broken down how magic works. And it's interesting to what you said about your reverse sex magic, because that's one biggest piece that I've found over the years that I've really had to figure out a way to do, because it's the detachment, because that's the key, right? So you put all your emotion into the ritual, all your emotion into whatever spell you're doing, and then you let it go, but then you have to let it go. And I actually found a similar way that it sounds like what you do it, and I'd love to hear your kind of process of how you do this as well. But the easiest way I found to let go is to go into the worst case scenario, because it's like you said, our fear base, right? It's the fear of actually not getting that. It's like, I really want this thing. I did a ritual for it. I really want this thing to manifest it, but then it's a fear of not actually getting it. So I find that delving into that worst case scenario, if it doesn't happen or any of that sort of stuff, actually takes a fear around it, and that finally lets it go. Is that kind of something similar to how you do it, perceive it?
And I think what we really need to do is like, we're in these heightened states of like bliss and expansion is what allows these things to kind of like all drop into place, because we're seeing the world through that lens. And to be in an authentic state of like bliss and an expansion, we need to actually deal with the parts of us that are not in that state. And I think a lot of where people go wrong with magic is that they just go, oh, I just got to be really happy. I just got to like, play in this space. And it's like magic is a pretty good bullshit detector actually, and it won't drive anything from your ego, from your identity. It will only drive from the soul essence. So any part of us that is not connected to our soul in that it's not going to happen.
So what advice would you give? Because the thing as well, like the whole, the secret kind of law of attraction, positive psychology movement is huge. But I feel like a lot of people that I speak to who are manifesting in that have, really unreliable results. And I think what can be negative around that is that you end up blaming yourself for it. So because I feel like it's a mixture between our willpower and then, the collective willpower, right? So you've got to kind of push through resistance sometimes. So if someone was, following that law of attraction, be positive around everything, Abraham Hicks-ish type of approach, what advice would you give to them in your perspective of how the universe actually works? We're talking about the void, the manifest universe. How do you think it responds to magic in general and people's willpower?
I think magic fucking hates dogma. I think it's like so done with all of your positive psychology shit, like it's just like it's not going to play that way. Yeah. Anything that is brought to you from your mind is just like you can just fuck it off if you want to play magic. Like you have to like actually let go of the mind and come into the body. And for me, the reason why people are so terrified to be in their bodies is because their sexual energy, it's like the Kundalini energy, and that's really what I'm dealing with, and why I feel like I don't have unreliable results with magic. Like anything that I manifest always comes into fruition, and because it's soul driven as well, so, and for the soul to land in the body, we have to free up the Eros. So the Eros is, the life force energy, the current. It's, for me, it's like the vibration of non-dualistic connection inside of the body. So for me, like, this is constantly always here. It's kind of like our heartbeat. And what gets in the way of our heartbeat from actually being in full expression and just like living with our subconscious mind and our conscious mind together is our conditioning. So anything we're bringing in through the mind is actually just more dogma and conditioning. Whereas when we actually let go of all of our dogma and conditioning, our Eros is free to be in the body. And I believe that sex is the baseline of actually like kind of like charging through that energy and like clearing out all the stuff that's there. Because Eros has no right and wrong. It doesn't have like the energy itself is not based in any kind of conditioning. It's not even based in love. Like when it's not based in any kind of concept of what it needs to be, it's actually just its own driving force. And when we get clear with the driving force of Eros inside of our body, then we're able to clear through all the bullshit that's in the way of all these pieces coming together. So it's kind of the same in Tantra. We might call it like alchemizing the masculine and feminine together as well. So often when there's like some sort of magic that's not coming into fruition that you're trying to manifest, it's because the immaturity in either the masculine or the feminine is not balanced. And so a lot of what I'm doing with the work with the butt plugs is the alchemizing of the masculine and feminine energies. It's the alchemizing of the conscious and subconscious minds. And when they come together and they're free in the body, then there seems to be this pathway that's just carved out that just moves, because you're not stuck in any kind of value system that's actually stopping you from having what you want. Like I truly believe that conditioning and dogma is the major thing that's standing in the way of magic actually existing and working for a person.
So when you say dogma, so what do you mean by dogma? What's your kind of perception of what people are usually doing at the moment that's standing in their way of performing successful magic?
Well, it's any set of beliefs that is rooted in the mind and not in the body. So the body doesn't have, so kind of like Eros, the body doesn't have doesn't make meaning out of things. It just experiences itself. So anytime, like if I need to share with you, like, let's say I'm sitting here and I've got like a really uncomfortable knot of something inside of my gut, and I'm just feeling super contracted and I don't want to be on this call and I'm just like really uncomfortable. What I actually have to share with you is that I have anxiety, right? But I'm going to tell you now that experience that I'm having in my body is really completely different to how you're experiencing anxiety in your body. And even that is dogma, because we are playing in this set of an understanding of a word that is completely different in my body to how it is in your body. And so the only way to actually alchemize with magic is to really deeply know the self. Like, it's like the knowing of your own experience beyond having to share it with someone else. And when I work with the, Self Pleasure, which is basically my main form of like spell casting, is, I'm working with being with the self beyond the sharing of the self. So I don't go into my body and go, oh, looks like I've got a bit of anxiety here right now. I don't need to have that conversation with myself. What I actually have to do is be with the thing that's actually moving, which is the sensation. So I drop in down past the thought, past the emotion, past the feeling, into the sensation. And when I'm with the sensation, that's when I can actually journey with it and actually allow it to free it from its contracted state into an expansive state. And this is basically me just getting all my cells on board with what I'm trying to create. So I'll go into a self-pleasure practice, I'll set the intention of like, this is what I'm going to create. And then I'll alchemize with all the parts of me that are not okay with that thing happening. And I feel like I'm just realigning everything to come into the vortex with me of what I'm trying to create.
Yeah.
And I feel that that's the best way to like move through dogma, is just to bring it back to sensation.
Yeah, I agree. And I love what you said about words, because that's the thing as well. We think that, we all see the colors the same, we all understand words the same, but yeah, we have this dogma around it. Even the word dogma, people, experience that concept differently. So, and I think the big piece as well, what you were saying is, obviously these have been practices that you've been doing for a while. And initially every practice you do is conscious, right? So you're installing software, installing ideas, like learning to drive, right? When you're doing it, you're doing it very efficiently, you're kind of clunky. And if you had to, escape or something like that, or drive in a, kind of catastrophic environment, you wouldn't do too well. But once you have that and your subconscious takes over, you can do so many things. You can have a conversation, you still get to your destination safely. But I think that's the part that's missing for quite a lot of people as well. They don't seem to, because you started early, you started practicing a lot of these things, and I think without even speaking it, you understood that you needed to install that software and play with it into the subconscious, where a lot of people don't. They think, oh, okay, I'll just try this once, or I try this a couple of times, and it doesn't work because they're still operating in their conscious mind, right? They haven't actually let their body play with it. Like learning a musical instrument as well, you can't really express the full expression through that catalyst. And that's why I think as well it's important for what I'm trying to do with House of Mages is introduce people to different systems which they can install and then play with as well.
Yeah.
Because is there a method that you use initially that you kind of changed and shifted and use now? Because obviously sexual energy and sex magic in general is your go-to from the sounds of it these days.
Yeah, and it actually is reminding me. So like I have a sex magic meditation, which I will send to you, that we can put in this course as well. And the way that I have been explaining to people is that when you come into sex magic, you often think like, it's going to be this really beautiful, pleasurable experience of like opening your body to the Eros and to the magic of sex, right? And that's going to allow all your dreams to come true. And really what I think is actually happening is that like what we're doing is we're getting closer to our reality that we're trying to bring into our existence. And as that comes in, what we're actually faced with is everything that is not that. So, like, I feel like a lot of people give up, like you said, did I have an experience with like magic that hasn't really worked? It's like, yeah, in the beginning, it was really friggin' disheartening, because it's like you're being with all the parts of you that are not magic. And you have to come to close to parts of you that are feeling the contraction, because that is actually where the magic happens. When you learn to be with the parts of you that don't feel like magic, that don't feel like this creative genius, it's like like embodiment, magic, all these pieces, is just like how closely can you relate to your humanness? And from there, that's where the magic actually arises, because the mystery is in the human experience. It's like, I feel like, when we talk about little kids and we're like chasing the fairies and we're running around the park and we're just in this like a complete alternate universe. Yeah. It's like, this is what people think they're looking for when they're being with magic. But the magic is actually so deeply in all of the intrinsical things. And even like, when we talk about trauma and stuff like that, like those have been some of the biggest access points to my deepest magic, is like journeying through to the depths of my trauma, you know, like when something awful happens to me and I like journey and then I go, right, I'm going to sit and be in my practice right now because it's right here. Those have been some of the most profound spells that I've been able to cast, because I've been able to drop into the layers of my humanity that I've been running from, that are quite hard to access. So yeah, that's also another thing. Like if you are new to magic and you're wanting to, you know, learn how to be with these parts of yourself, don't go into magic when you're in a great mood and you're having a great time. You know, that'll be fun. But honestly, the beginning for me, the magic actually started to happen when I learned how to be with the harder parts of the human experience.
I love what you said, that being with the magic is meeting all the parts of yourself that aren't magic. And I think that's the thing as well. I know with me and people that I've talked to, because early in my magical experience career, I guess, I met some people who started with it but wouldn't touch it after, because what happened is they had a couple of successes from little rituals and then they started doing bigger things and then their life fell apart. They lost their partner, they lost their job, they had to move house, all this sort of stuff happened. And so they associate that with the magic. They're like, oh no, magic is bad, magic is evil, magic's going to ruin my life and ruin your life. Don't touch it, it's bad, it's evil. But from what I understand, and I love the piece that you said about it, eventually once magic, because magic is alive, right? And I think we perceive magic in that same way, that life force. Magic's like, oh, okay, they're actually getting serious about this. All right, well, if you're serious about doing magic, if you really want to be a mage, then this partner isn't serving you, this job isn't serving you, this, boom, 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 boom. And there is a part, like multiple times, I think we've both chatted about this before, that whole Hagalaz, that big, you know, the tower from the tarot, that just like, all right, this doesn't serve you. So, yeah, but what's your kind of experience with that and your perspective on that? Because I think we thrive in that environment. Not all the time. I went through a very interesting one recently, but eventually we thrive. Yeah, we are human.
I totally agree. Yeah. I do agree with that. And, you know, like for me, I personally have experienced that the fire is one of the first elements of magic. You know, like in my experience, it's like the burning and the blazing through all the bullshit to get to the essence of what actually wants to move through is the potency. You know, where my personal magical journey right in this moment is, like I've done a lot of work with fire, the element of fire in magic, and I've done a lot of transformation, a lot of like breaking through to get to the core of things. And where the element that I'm more playing with now is kind of like space with the void pieces that are really alive for me right now, and also just that kind of the feeling of like gentle air. And I experience that kind of like this free falling energy that I'm playing with now. So I'm in total agreement with you on like, yes, in the beginning, a lot of times magic makes you feel like your world's falling apart, because it is clearing out all the stuff that's not in the truth of your soul's alignment. But also all those things are just breaking you into a completely different understanding. And it actually kind of goes back to the dogma piece, because a lot of the reason why I think people can't like the spiritual community in general actually that plays with magic has this conversation that I hear over and over again about, I was going to do this thing, but it wasn't in alignment. You know, this is like a really common phrase that I hear a lot of the time. And that not alignment piece is often like discomfort, you know, like, and we really have to be careful where we're playing with, actually just makes me really uncomfortable to do this. And also what is, you just actually burning through the layers of your value system to access a different state of consciousness. So when all those things are burning away and your partner's leaving you and you lost your job and all the shit that goes wrong, it's like that magic is testing you and saying, in this moment, can you stay connected to the truth that is, that divinity is actually on your side and that magic is always working its way through you. And what has been my experience of that is that when I have stayed connected to that understanding, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter how much it feels out of alignment, I've been able to connect to the, it's like I always see it as like we're sitting in the chaos. The chaos is moving around us and we're becoming the eye of the storm inside of that. And when we become the eye of the storm, then it's just like we are actually initiated into deeper levels of magic that are able to come towards us. And that's, to me, when you start to get to play with like the essence of the void and like for me, the magic from the void, where I am listening to the nothingness now, because I'm comfortable in the eye of the storm and in the nothingness. And that, to me now, I don't feel like my life has to be like a fiery, explosion of things just having to move out of my path to get me to connect to the alignment of my magic, because like I'm choosing for it to be a different pathway. One of the other things I see as well with the people that get really deep into magic sometimes is that they think that is the only way things can happen, is to play with the element of fire. And so it's just like they just keep burning things away and having to have these massive peak experiences. Whereas I feel like now my experience is like every moment of my life is self-pleasure, like I'm just deeply in the sensations and journeying with. It's like I'm just touching on the reality in each moment that I'm bringing into existence. And so like it's like there's not big parts of me that are getting left behind anymore, because I'm journeying with that element of air that is just touching just so gently on the parts of me that are in my subconscious.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's so many pieces there that I completely agree with. And that's the thing. Some of my biggest life-changing events have been through places and people that I didn't expect, because it wouldn't be somewhere I usually go because it's uncomfortable. And that's the part as well, because I'm really trying to. I had a story for so long that I wasn't intuitive, but I don't think that's the case at all for anyone. It's just that I didn't trust my intuition because I didn't know what was my mind and what was my intuition as well. So is there for you, and that's the thing, it's different, right? Because some people I speak to, they're like their intuition's in their gut, or it might be in their womb, or, it might be in their chest, or it might be the back of their left ear or something like that. It's different for everyone. Do you have a kind of way for you to tell what is your authentic intuition, what is your mind, and which direction to go? And is there a method you still use, like a compass?
Yeah, do you play with human design?
No, but you're probably the fifth person who said that to me in the last couple of weeks, so I feel like I should.
Maybe you do. Well, anyway, they have this concept with where our authority comes from, like our inner authority. And they talk about the gut authority and the sacral authority and the mind authority, and it kind of sounds similar to what you're just sharing about, like, where does your intuition come from? Anyway, I have quite a rare one, which is no inner authority, right? So like my decision making is coming from this place of, when I first heard it, I was like, wow, that sounds really disempowering. Like I have no inner authority, like that I'm just kind of being blasted with, anybody else that's around me, sort of thing. But what actually dropped in for me when I started to journey that on an embodied level was actually like the nothingness is my authority. So it's almost like, when I have an idea drop in to me, and I'm like, I often work in the visionary space. So a lot of the ideas that I'm executing for my business, it's like they kind of come in from me from the nothingness. So when I have this feeling, it's almost like it's coming in from the void, like it's coming in from behind me and it's moving through me. And when something starts to move through me from behind and back here, it's like it's not even in me. It's like it's just like right behind me and it's just coming through. That's when I really trust my authority with it, because I'm like, oh, this isn't even mine. Like I have absolutely no reason to think this or to feel this. Like my conditioning doesn't even add up with this. There's so many different. There's no like. Yeah, the intuition is sort of like deeper than that. And also like just for women, for women that are watching this, there's a big piece on like trusting your intuition, and what that often looks like for in the beginning stages of trusting the intuition is going, I'm getting this information that this person is not right, or this is wrong, or something's fishy is going on here. That's often where we play with the intuition piece. And I think women have this experience that we need to be like, that's fucked, and like, you need to act on our intuition, and like we're getting this spidey senses of things are not right and that we need to do something with it. And what my experience has been is like, it's actually asking us to deepen our journey with the thing that's uncomfortable. It's actually not always about changing something or catalyzing anything into existence. It's like, how much can you be with that fact that this thing that is in your life doesn't feel like it's in alignment? It's like, it's just like and it's not in a disempowering way. It's just like, how do you take care of yourself rather than trying to control something outside of you? Do you know what I mean?
Definitely, yeah. And I think you have a similar view on like kind of the grand structure of the cosmos and the void, because I see like infinite potential all around in the void, and we can kind of pluck out what we want to bring into our manifest universe. And I guess when we're talking about alignment, to me, it feels like alignment with something that is ahead of myself, like myself ahead of myself, or my higher self, or my daemon, whatever you want to call it. And I think it kind of knows what I deeply want, what my body wants, my subconscious wants, but then my conscious mind is always getting distracted and all those sort of things. But that also changes. So my higher self might be focused on this path in the void, but then as time goes on, it's like, actually, no, your path is changing. So it's not really set. And I feel like what you said earlier about we don't need at early stages in our practicing magic and our development spiritual journey, often we have to have these big fiery shifts because we only listen to the loud noises, right? It's like your body, right? If you've had an injury or even like a toothache, your body initially was like, hey, the way that you're doing your yoga poses at the moment is hurting your shoulder. And first you get like a little niggling pain, and then it gets louder and louder and louder. It's like, well, I need to stop now. So boom, the shoulder blows out, or something happens. And that happens, in your body and in your life as well. And I feel like in alignment, what's really good for you, good for your soul and what you really want, if you're not listening or don't know how to listen to those subtle signs, the only way that you're going to listen is when, your higher self or your daemon or the universe is like, all right, you wipe it all away, and then you stop. So I think that as time goes on, for me, definitely, I've learned to listen to the subtleties, but also I fall asleep. And that's I think a piece as well. I think that people think that once you're awake, you're awake. I fall asleep every day. I'm constantly, re-catching myself and being like, dude, you've really like fallen off your practice or this or this or this. And it's cycles, right? Like, do you feel kind of similar about that concept?
Yeah. I do. And with practices as well, I think you just raised a really important thing of like, we get into these ideas that, we must do this practice. We must keep casting this spell. We must keep doing this thing. Mm-hmm. And like you said, there are other things that are grabbing our attention in the space around us. And I'm actually, especially with the cyclic nature of being a woman as well, and is for me to really meet each moment, like often one of the, major magic access points as a woman is to play with the cycle, like the bleed, right? And and again, there's just so much dogma in this as well for me, because it's just like this understanding of like when you ovulate, it's summer and you must, go out and do the spells, and then when you're in the autumn phase, you're in the enchantress and you're like this energy, and it's like, and when you're in winter, you must stay home and be in this, and you mustn't be creating, you must be deeply resting. And for me, that like what I've journeyed with like spiritual practices and magic practices and, the cycle of what it means to be a woman is to access it moment by moment. Like, again, it's the same thing with the sensations. It's like, well, the only way that we find truth with our path is to deeply trust the coming back to the self. So if in the middle of like ovulation, I'm not feeling super creative and that I should be on a stage and speaking or doing whatever I need to be doing, and I actually should be in bed resting, I'm trusting that so much deeper than any other external piece of literature on what my cycle means. And again, with my like spiritual practices or doing ritual, it's like if I'm doing breath work every day for a month and then I don't do breath work for 2 weeks, I trust that. I trust that so deeply inside of myself now. And it's been a process of letting go of more and more of the dogmas and the understanding. And it's about the trusting of the process as things fall away and as things come into my life.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think a big piece of this whole House of Mages for me is really finding a way to build a language with people. And because that's, coming back to the dogma and the ideas of words, trying to get across what this all means, how to do it, why you would even want to pursue this. Because I think as well that I know, I've said before, it's just a calling. You feel called to do this kind of work, but a lot of the time, yeah, it's a difficult path, a tricky path, very fun path. But I mean, why? Okay, I guess I could ask, what would be the difference between doing magic and not doing magic? It's because yes, magic is everything and in everything, but if it's also in everything, it's in nothing, I guess. So what would be the difference between doing magic and not doing magic, walking the path of magic and not walking the path of magic?
I think it's Marianne Williamson that says, like, there's two ways to live life, as if everything's a miracle or as if nothing's a miracle. And that for me that just solidifies it. It's like every day we have the opportunity to live in the gratitude of magic and what can exist around us, and that we get to create our own reality. And I would say that's the major difference for me between playing with magic and not. It's like you can be in life and you can be in the seriousness of like running a business and being a human and how hard it is, or you can literally just be in the dedication to the deeper listening, which is where the real magic is. It's like I don't even know if I have any words for this. I feel like it's just all over my face. Like it's just like right there.
Yeah. I think it's just a lens, right? And like what you said as well, just like the seriousness of it and playing with it. And yeah, the sense of humor, I think as well, that's why we gelled so well, because like one, I knew you just tell that when someone embodies the magic that they do and their practices, and we've delved into some deep stuff, some deep magic, some, really intense stuff. But yet we have this playful, it's just all a game kind of thing as well. And I feel like a lot of, especially in the occult world and practitioners of magic, people get into this like headspace of and like you get this in the yoga world too, right? I mean, I've had some people just walk out of my classes because I make jokes in class and I'm not like a serious yogi. And it's just, people need to lighten up. Magic is the most serious thing that you'll ever do in your life, but it's just magic, right? It's just a game.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like it's just so exquisite to play with the paradoxical nature of life. And it's almost like life as art rather than life as science, It's a beautiful path to walk. And I think that we all have access to it. I guess like I just encourage anyone that's watching this is to just like open yourself to magic with intention. I've also been playing with like intending things to happen versus having intention. And there's a beautiful fine line when we start to play with the intrinsic nature of these words.
Definitely. And one thing I would like to ask you, and we can put this in a different way, because what you said is you invite anyone who is thinking about getting into magic to get into it. I guess I have two questions for you, and they're kind of a similar question. One, how would you recommend someone to get into magic? Where would they start? And I think this is a similar piece. I like the idea as well so imagine that you just know that when you die, you're going to get reborn. But when you get reborn, you lose all your memories of your past life. You may have some certain skills and unknown skills, but you kind of have to refine them, right? So if you were to maybe for the next 5 minutes make a little video to say to your next life self, who is going to have no memory of this life, some advice that would quicken their path, or advice, so say they found this at 16, you found this at 16 in your next life, what would you say? It doesn't even just have to be about magic, it could be about life in general, but link it to magic, and just what advice would you summarize in 5 minutes to your next life self, to give yourself a little bit of a kickstart, a little bit, just to put you on the spot, not... Yeah.
Yeah, just 5 minutes. I love it.
A whole time of work and experience in 5 minutes. What would you summarize?
Yeah, I feel like the transmission is just like it's actually just one of just like I almost just want to giggle, like it's just like I just want to laugh with this younger part of me that's just like but wants to go on this journey, and just it's just like a knowing smile of mastery. The journey is the mastery, and that is the magic. It's like the complete letting go of all attachment to anything happening, because it's already here.
But how would you, what advice would you give to your next life 16-year-old self who has no concept of non-attachment yet?
It's just like there's nothing to do, there's nowhere to be. Just coming right here, this is where it's like the party's here, you know, like there's nowhere else. I love that. I'm assuming my 16-year-old self is searching for the party. You know? And it's just that softness. Like, this is like the major thing that I feel like I have been missing my whole life, that's only just dropped in for me now. It's just the laughter and the softness of all of these pathways. Doesn't matter what we're doing. Doesn't matter if you're trying to get a job, trying to do magic, you're trying to meet the love of your life, like all these things. It's just like all the things that we're trying to control. Like the actual relationship to control is actually what we're trying to work with. So it's just like, listen, like reverse it, come back to actually what you're actually doing in each moment. So it's just like deeper listening. And I guess like really the major like tools for that, I would just say is self-pleasure. It's like sit with the word self-pleasure until you discover what it is inside of yourself, and sit and like honor, like if I'm actually going to give advice to my younger self or to anybody that's playing with magic, is like sit with the masters, you know, like everything happens through transmission. It does not happen through understanding things from a mind. Like even when people are watching this video of me and you right now, I want them to just receive you and I from what they feel in their body rather than what they're hearing us say with our words. It's just like the vibration of how, you know, this is kind of what I felt when I met you on that dance floor. I'm just like, oh, like how you feel in your body told me more about you than any words that you said to me. And I didn't even need to hear your words or how you were into magic, because I could just feel your life force and your vibrancy. And that to me spoke volumes above everything else.
Yeah.
So the more time you're spending around people who want to receive their transmission, the more powerful this is going to be.
Yeah, I feel the same about you. I love what you said about, this is where the party's at, because I've even said those words before, because I think there's a big piece in the spiritual community that, you know, we want to be up here, you know, we either want to like go into the higher ethereal realms or even leave the planet and all this sort of stuff. And this is, you know, the combination of everything. This is, you know, the good, the bad, the dark, the light, but we can't experience that. It's all just a big paradox. And we really need that contrast to fully appreciate things. And it's interesting you're talking about ayahuasca, and I've delved into plant medicine as well. And I'd maybe on another chat we can chat about that more in detail. But the biggest piece that I got from my journeys in plant medicine, when I read really, really frighteningly deep, was underneath it all, the universe just wants to laugh and dance. That's all I got. Like that is like the cosmic joke. There's just nothing but everything. But all the universe wants to do, it doesn't give a shit about your, you know, worries and stuff. It just wants to laugh and dance. And I think that's the biggest piece I took away. And when things are I'm getting too bogged down in the muggleness of the world, I just come back to that piece, just laugh and dance.
Goosebumps. Yeah, I love that. I think it's that reminder as well, isn't it? It's just like our childlike state that I spoke to. You know, people tell you that it's silly to make potions or run around and chase fairies and all that kind of stuff. It's like, no, like that's the wisest part of us. Like, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think that's as well our friendship, you know, early on in our hangs, we just, you know, ventured through waterfalls and just climbed trees and all that sort of stuff. And felt so connected to, source, whatever you want to call it. But felt more like myself than, a lot of the stuff that I do. And I think people just want permission, you know, because, and that's the thing as well. Like, that's why I like chatting to you, because, you know, you are successful in a business and you know, general life level, but you make time for all this playfulness and to hang out in trees and waterfalls with fairies and all that sort of stuff as well. And people just want permission from people that, I guess, from their lens, you know, have their shit together. So I love that you're doing that, giving people permission to play, and that's all they want, right? Everyone just wants to play and to dance and to laugh, but they just want to be told that it's okay, and it's So I guess to finish off today, I just wanted to, because you are sharing your sex magic course on House of Mages, And I would really love for someone who had no idea what sex magic is, or even someone who has done other types of magic, I guess, what is sex magic to you, and how it differs from other types of magic as you perceive it?
For sure. So like, just while we're on the topic of plant medicine, I feel like for me, this is very similar. I want people to, like, when we're playing with the essence of Eros and sexual energy, it can be very easy to play in the identity space. Like, oh, that person's hot. Oh, I want to have sex with that person. And it's like this kind of, it's still very driven from the mind, and it's actually driven from status and power often. It's like, oh, that person's got nice shoes. I'd actually like to have sex with them. You know, they've got a great job. It's like, it's a lot of bullshit stuff, actually, a lot of the time that makes us want to have sex with people. And what I want to do is actually have people journey into receiving this like it's medicine, you know? So when this Eros comes into your space and you're actually choosing to sit with this as your magic, you're going, what is it that, you don't sit there and say to Mother Ayahuasca, like, you know, this is how I'm going to have this happen. I'm going to drink this thing, and then you're going to show me all of this stuff that I need to see. Like, we hold that reverence when it comes to plant medicine. And I'd like people to work with sex magic in the same way. It's like holding reverence for the Eros, and let the Eros actually take you on the journey. And it's the same piece that I speak to with like masturbation versus self-pleasure. Like, masturbation is like, we're going to sit and be with the body, and we're going to use friction-based pleasure to have an orgasm, have arousal, you know, have pleasure at all. And with self-pleasure, what we're doing is actually going, I'm going to, you know, be with the Eros and allow my body to speak to me, and allow my body to take me on the journey of where it needs to go to offer me the clarity that I'm looking for. So yeah, with sex magic, just like visualize sitting with the space with that Eros. And with that Eros as well is how the medicine actually works through us.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you for sharing, and it's an honor to have you as a mage and in the House of Mages. So you'll be able to find Victoria's work on there. And where else could people find more of what you do?
Yeah, so we have the Institute of New Paradigm Intimacy, which is the sexuality school. I have one for men, one for women, and you can find that at victoriaredbard.com. We also have the sex magic, we also have the butt plugs. Where else? We have the Eros Vault, which is just like a whole bunch of like in-depth like spells, I suppose, and information around the pathways of sexuality and mastery around sexuality, which is what I'm deeply passionate about. And then it's just like anyone that wants to find anyone who's connected to sexuality leadership. Like, I have a collective of sexuality leaders that's a part of my organization to help people get connected with the different lineages. So yeah, if you have any interest in that, then hit me up. I can probably point you in the right direction.
Amazing. And just to end, what would be one little sentence you would say to someone who is thinking about stepping onto the path of magic or really delving deeper into it?
Get used to the paradoxical nature of life. Learn to play in all the spaces, finding range in every single part of it.
Definitely. Yeah, I love that. Cool. Victoria, really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been really fun. This is long overdue. I'm sure we'll have another one.
Totally. Definitely. Okay. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Make Yoga Magic Again, the official podcast of the House of Mages. The House of Mages is an online school of yoga, tantra, and the magical arts. If you'd like to see more of what we're doing, you can head to thehouseofmages.com. Otherwise, all the links will be in the podcast episode description, and we'd love to connect with you more. Thank you, and make yoga magic again.